Hello, and welcome to Community Difference Makers, brought to you by Bankers Trust and United Way of Central Iowa. I'm Emily Abbas, and I'm grateful to be your host. Welcome to our third episode or discussion on affordable housing and homelessness. In our first two episodes, we talked about the myths surrounding homelessness and the growing challenges of housing affordability and poverty. Today, we're bringing these conversations closer to home, hearing from someone with lived experience and someone who's walked alongside them every day. We'll hear how small connections, a conversation, a navigator, a bit of hope can be a life-changing difference. Joining me today are Luke Lynch, who is Senior Community Impact Officer at United Way, Melissa Gradischnig, a community navigator who helps individuals and families connect to housing and essential supports, and Brandi Courtney, who's graciously agreed to share their personal story with us. Thank you all for being with us today. Luke, let's start with you. For those who may not be familiar, what role do community navigators play in the housing and homelessness system, and how do they connect people to the right supports? We talked to a navigator in one of our recent food insecurity episodes, and remind us how this model came about in Central Iowa.
Yeah, well, thanks for that question, and thanks for hosting. So the Community Navigator Pilot Project came out of the food security plan that was released a couple years ago. And one of the main themes that we heard is that people often don't have enough time, people being frontline folks in pantries, staff in pantries, to connect people with the resources that exist in the community. And I'll back up a little bit. Throughout the plan, we talked about how this food security plan is more than food. Food insecurity is a symptom of poverty. There are other areas that we need to talk about and address, housing being one of those. And we often talk about how housing is a fixed cost. Food is not a fixed cost, and so folks then access the pantries when they're in need of food. And so when they're accessing those pantries, that's a good time to connect with people who are in need and may qualify for other things in the community. And so housing being one of those clear examples. So the navigators really do spend that time with folks, the neighbors in need, to identify, what else might you need in the community? Are you aware of these services? How can we connect you to those? And then spend that time to do that warm handoff to the other organizations and the other nonprofits and government folks in the community doing that work.
Thank you. So Melissa, you serve as one of these United Way navigators. You work directly with families, with individuals such as Brandi who are in crisis. What does a typical day look like for you?
Oh, gosh.
No typical day, right? That's going to be the answer.
Yeah, no, it can change daily.
Tell us about your work.
Well, so I'm at two different places. I'm at DMARC on the south side,
Okay.
Part-time, and then I'm at We Lift Job Search Center in Indianola on the other hour. So they're very different locations. DMARC is people obviously coming in just to get food. So just, trying to make sure they know that I'm there. They've got my information out. So if I'm not there, they can give, my phone number, my email, whatever. And I can set up appointments with people. At We Lift, we have certain days and hours that we are just open. So people like Brandi can just come in during those hours and sit down. We do an intake, see, what that person needs, and then connect them to those resources, of course.
It sounds very rewarding, but also incredibly challenging. How do you build trust with the people who have possibly experienced judgment or barriers in the past when they come to ask for help?
I think just letting them know that, as I tell everybody, and I'm sure I've told Brandi this, everybody has a story. I don't care who you are. I've done this work for 35 years, so I'm very passionate about the community. Newer to Indianola, but becoming very passionate about that community and seeing the challenges that people are experiencing there. I've done work at the homeless shelter, so I've kind of seen every aspect of this. And I think just making sure they're comfortable. They come in, we have coffee, we have, water, we have snacks. Some people just come and hang out on our computers.
Great.
They just need a place to be for a couple hours. And then eventually they might come into my office and want to meet with me and get the resources that are needed.
What barriers do you see most often when someone's trying to find housing?
But there's just not enough affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we just went through a big challenge in December with the holidays. Many, many evictions were happening. So, me trying to go in and meet with landlords and explain situations and, maybe give this person a break. They really they really do want to pay their rent. It's not that people don't want to pay their rent, but when jobs aren't keeping up with the income for somebody to pay that much rent, and I know in Indianola especially, we're really fighting, with the city and city council and everybody to bring in more affordable housing.
And you mentioned you do work on the housing side, on the food insecurity side. Those tie into the topics that we're talking here, critical community issues. They're so interconnected. How does your work connect with other agencies or systems, maybe healthcare, schools, workforce programs?
Absolutely keeping those relationships strong and there and getting to know who your community is so you know who to call for the resources. I know that I can call, somebody at General Assistance every day and, we can either brainstorm together on how we can help somebody or, okay, yeah, I don't have any funding right now, but send them over here. So just, keeping all that intertwined and connected. And a lot of times we will send, someone to another agency, but a lot of times we can do it all within the one agency as well, which is nice. And we kind of call that in Indianola our community hub.
Okay. I'd like to turn to Brandi now. Thanks so much for being here. I'm sure sharing your story isn't easy. We do really appreciate, though, your willingness. It's an important story to share. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey, what was happening before you lost housing, and how that experience unfolded for you personally?
For me, it was more or less learning. I had separated with my kid's father, and I became on my own. So then I was working, I worked on my own, and I guess I didn't meet enough hours, or I guess didn't make enough. I don't know. I guess I could have worked a lot more. But the main point was I didn't make enough to cover my rent, other utilities, car insurance, gas, daily expenses. I do have help with food. But it just got really tough. And I've got 2 kids. They're 16 and 13, and they require a lot. One's, wants to go everywhere, and the other one wants to do things. And so on the side of it, it's kind of hard to save money to be able to kind of just go on adventures with them, even though, I try my best to go on a daily walk, or we go fishing. It's, certain things you can do. You don't have to have money. Anyways, but it got a little tough, and then it ended up with them having to stay with their dad, and I didn't have him anymore, or not as much, and therefore I kind of could not pay my rent, and it just kind of tumbled. I ended up in therapy. I was mentally not stable, and I decided to, in my trailer it needed some work, that there was things that I could not fix on my own. Just a whole bunch of stuff piling up all at once, and me trying to keep consistent with trying to see my kids, trying to go to work. My car's breaking down. Everything just happening, and this was in the midst of Christmas coming up, and my kids' birthdays are right around Christmas too. One's on Thanksgiving, or one's on near Thanksgiving, and one's on Halloween. So it just kind of was a big battle towards Christmas because I was scared. I was late on rent, and I couldn't pay anything. I'd gone to her a couple times. Once I did before. Sometimes they'd have funding, sometimes they don't, and it's not something they can control, I guess. I'm grateful for everything that she has helped me through. Back to that other side, I ended up selling my trailer, and I thought I had to move to a low income place, and they had told me that I'd had 30 days to go ahead and give the 30 days to my manager through the trailer park, and I did, and come December 1st, I didn't have nowhere to go. My apartment was not ready. So through Melissa and We Live and Sue and my dad, thankfully, and what I got out of the trailer, I was able to pay for 7 or 8, I
I
can't,
think 10 days.
10 days at a hotel room
Okay.
until they finally got me into an apartment. And it just, and in the midst of that, it was just tough with having to move everything into storage. I'm on my own, so I had to move box by box. If I wanted to keep anything I wanted to keep, I'm kind of a hoarder when it comes to my kids, so I have their first grade report cards, their pictures,
Yeah.
I hold on to every single little bit of memory that has gone in my life. And, my dad always tells me, just get rid of it. It's not important. Well, it is to me. And so I wanted to get it somewhere safe. Everything. I got as much as I could into my storage unit with my dad's help. He helped a lot. Even though he's 78 years old and he was trying to move as much as he could. And he's, it was tough on me to watch him because, he was helping me so much that it felt like I was hurting him in a way. But thankfully, we were really happy when we got the apartment. My dad he's not too happy about it being third floor, but in the end, it came out okay. I got in there, and now I'm able to afford it, considering, it does include heat, electric, and all that with rent. Compared to before, my rent was like 600 and then 300 electric and all this above. It just, I couldn't make enough, and it was just difficult, and I was just really scared of not having anywhere to go.
Well, the apartment we got her into is a HUD-funded apartment.
Okay.
So the unit is the HUD. It's
Got
not
it.
a certificate. So it goes on only 30% of her income. So even if she, God forbid, lost her job, her rent would go down to $25.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that.
And it's also kind of tough. I feel kind of like I let down my kids because I'm in this position. I'm 36 years old and living there when I feel like I should be somewhere higher, but I'm working on it with my therapist and, accepting this is a new year, new beginning, and there's ways to look up, I keep reminding myself it's a new day, give myself affirmations and do everything I can to not go in a mental breakdown or anything like that, but for the most part I'm happy. I'm really happy now. Things are looking up, and it was a story. It was not a story, but it was a big chapter in my life that I'll never forget. And I will never ever. I don't know how I can ever repay Melissa for everything that she helped me through. She messaged me, let me know if you need anything, and was just always great support.
Let's go back to the beginning of that, because clearly you have a great relationship and you've been through so much and you rely on each other. How did you first connect? And Melissa, what stood out to you when you first met Brandi?
So I met Brandi, it was either late May or early June,
Yeah.
right after we started with this project.
Okay.
So she was actually my first client. She didn't realize that till today.
No, I didn't.
And she came in at that time actually looking for electric assistance
Okay.
for her trailer. And I do remember being shocked at how much it was. But then it dawned on me, oh, this is a trailer. So I'm sure it's losing heat. It's losing, doesn't have new windows. It was older. And also looking for some food. So Salvation Army drops off food boxes And so I gave her, a thing of food. And I don't know, we just kind of bonded that
Yeah,
day.
it
Right.
just
We just started that relationship. And then when she was looking for an apartment, I don't even remember how we connected again if you reached back out to me. But,
it just
small
happened.
world, I used to manage the HUD apartments that she's in.
Okay.
So then I was just able to help navigate with that conversation with the manager there now and, kind of help push that process through a little bit quicker.
Brandi, what difference has it been to you to have a navigator along with you on this journey and a friend?
Amazing. She's like, I lost my mom a few years ago, so I only have my dad and my stepmom. I have my stepmom too. But she's there and she's close. She easy to talk to, understanding. So that's really good when it comes to somebody, non-judgmental and that doesn't look down on you because of the situations or anything like that. So yeah.
For both of you, what misconceptions do you think people have about what homelessness really looks like? And what do you wish others better understood about the realities of trying to find housing while struggling financially?
I think the homelessness, and I learned this when I worked at the shelter, many, many people are just a paycheck away
Right.
from being homeless. Yeah. It was a big eye opener for me, even when I started working there and the clients that we had. So in this situation, even though she wasn't, your homeless person living on the street, she was homeless for 10 days because she had to stay at a hotel. And what would that have looked like? She might have had to stay in her car, had her dad and, we live not been able to help her, to pay that hotel bill.
Mm-hmm. And I would definitely say not I know a lot of people think it's either people will come to use or like judging them that they might be on some kind of substance or anything like that. I think a lot of the times I mean especially nowadays I see in the world a lot of people having mental health struggles and sometimes it beats you down. It really does. And then you can't work because of it or something like that. I just know like, situations happen, things happen. You can have a sick kid and then you can't go to work or, it's everything above. And I'm so grateful for my bosses at Walmart in Indianola because they definitely, I missed so much work during this process and they, they all were really, really, really nice and helped me through it and were understanding of it and did not fire me. I was really lucky for that. So I still have my job, but I mean, I would definitely say every little bit helps, whether it's talking to someone, whether it's just giving them, a meal to eat, a warm blanket, just anything and everything. It can help. I don't know what more I can say, but I know it did for me just coming in there and talking to her. And I mean, she was just there, and that's what was important, support and guidance and not feeling like I was alone most of the time, even though I did in a way, but I wasn't.
Well, and Brandi is so lucky that her job was so understanding. I met with a gal yesterday that, come to find out, she doesn't have any. She's on maternity leave, and so she came in for assistance because she can't pay her rent. Because for 6 weeks she will not get paid, no vacation, no sick time. You know, so yeah, that's just kind of our world nowadays. It seems like.
Wow. I'm so glad you have each other. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Luke, hearing stories like this brings the data that United Way looks at every day to life. What does this tell us about the bigger picture? So the systems that need to work together to better prevent homelessness in the first place.
Yeah. I think, first, thank you for sharing your story. So impactful to be able to put a story with that data that we have. But we've talked about Alice in previous episodes. Brandi is Alice, asset limited, income constrained, employed, and they just spoke to that folks are working, folks are doing their best, folks are moving along, and Brandi hit on several of the elements that United Way works on. If we're talking about essential needs, we're talking about housing and food that Brandi mentioned. If we're talking about economic opportunity, workforce, if we're talking about health and well-being, mental health, all of these things are so connected. And we have to be focusing on it from a systems level, because it can't just happen in a microscope. It can't just happen that we're focused on one issue. We've got to be talking about all of them and how they interact together. And it's a complex story. And sometimes I think we want to be able to say, well, if we do this one thing, we've solved it. And we know that that's not the case, but that's why we're here to fight those issues.
And are there particular trends or data points that surprise people when you share them?
I think the trends that were mentioned around, Alice, we talk about Alice all the time, that it's folks who are working 1, 2, 3 jobs, have a family, or trying to keep up. One thing around the Navigator pilot project that has surprised me, and we talk about the trust that was built between these two, and that takes time sometimes. And so preliminary data from this pilot project, we're keeping all kinds of data, and it's not entirely ready to be shared, but the time that the 3 navigators have spent with folks, neighbors in need at the beginning, has decreased because they've become more knowledgeable about what exists in the community to refer folks to, but they've also built the trust. A lot of folks are coming back 2 and 3 times because they know this is somebody that can connect me with the resources. They care about me, and they've built that trust. And so I don't know if it's surprising. I think we knew all along that trust needed to be built, but it bears out in the data that we're seeing.
Yeah. So tell us what Housing Solutions Alliance is and how that organization supports this work at the systems level.
Sure. So I've been fortunate to sit in on some of the meetings of HSA and the Blueprint to Address Homelessness. And it's looking at these systems level focuses. It's looking at prevention. How can we make sure that we can cover rent, or there's available units in the community to make sure that Brandi has a place to go. But then it's also looking at workforce as well and identifying, okay, how that's part of the prevention. How can we support workforce to make sure that folks don't fall into this to begin with? And so HSA is really, focused on homelessness and the continuum of care, from emergency shelter to permanent supportive housing, but then also moving beyond that, because we want to make sure that we're moving people beyond, but we also want to make sure that people aren't falling into homelessness. And HSA is really doing a great job of focusing on that.
Thanks for helping explain that.
And I've been having conversations with them also, and hopefully with Luke's support in United Way. Would love to do like a landlord forum that we can really teach the landlords, what is going on and what is really happening with people. And, so and I understand that being, a property owner is a business, so there's money to be made, but there's also another side of everything and everybody.
I kind of also think it would be great if, because, you get that first paycheck, and where does that first paycheck go on the first? It goes all to rent.
Right.
Now, if we can just, if, I don't know, in my opinion, have it split in 2.
Mm-hmm.
Just, where you're...
And that's where a lot of the evictions come in, is people would like to split that. So if landlords would just allow that, to pay twice a month, then I think it would really drop the numbers.
Look at these great ideas when great minds come together. Melissa, you do see these challenges every day. What do you wish the community and maybe also policymakers better understood about families experiencing homelessness and instability?
I think just to back up what Luke said, just the whole picture, that it is the jobs, it is everything. Oh my gosh, kids with even their mental health, in the state that so many of the kids are in right now, and all the worries of the world, and just understanding that we need more affordable housing. $1,500 a month is not affordable for even someone like me, who works full time. And right. So to expect that out of someone working at Walmart for, I don't know how much, but yeah.
So Melissa, despite the challenges, what gives you hope? Hope about this work and the direction our community is heading?
That I'm confident we can change.
I love that.
Yeah.
Brandi, what gives you hope now? What do you want people listening to take away from your personal story?
Stay strong. don't let it beat you down. Keep fighting the good fight, as hard as it is. Every little step is a step further. Sometimes it's a step backwards, 2 steps back, and then you got to go 4 steps forward. It'll keep going back and forth, but eventually, I don't know. There's hope that there's more people like us, like you guys, like that will hear this and see and be able to help others in the community, a good, and everywhere. Just little things here and there for people. That's just my hope, and that people can just be genuine and not judgmental.
And policymakers listening to people like Brandi.
Luke, what can listeners do to support these efforts as they're listening here? Whether they're an advocate, a volunteer, or community member, building on Brandi's great advice of both being genuine and generous.
Well, first I would say to get involved in a few ways. One is to volunteer. There are always opportunities at different nonprofits. Organizations are always in need of volunteers, and we've got a great website at United Way to be able to go find those volunteer opportunities. Another is to advocate. We heard policymakers, decisions being made. Advocacy is important. So there are lots of newsletters out there. United Way's advocacy newsletter comes out every Friday during legislative session. It's a great way to stay involved and stay up to date on what's happening. And then the last, I'll give a plug for our opportunity work groups. We have several of them, one around food insecurity, one around transportation, one around housing, and one around reentry. These are work groups of folks in the community who just decided, hey, this is something I want to focus on. I'm passionate about this, or I want to know more about it. And so it runs that spectrum. And so those meet every month for the most part. And you can go to our website, unitedwaydm.org, to learn more about those.
Great. Thank you all three for being here. You all
Thanks for having us.
You give me hope. And I have hope in our community that our listeners are going to step up. I especially just appreciate your honesty and your courage, both of you, in sharing your stories. I've learned a lot about simple ideas come to life. Let's do it. Let's have a landlord forum, right? Let's work on that. United Way as conveners, let's work on that. Let's find ways to spread paychecks across months. That's a simple thing. That sounds like it would make a huge difference for you. So I just encourage everyone who's listening to lift up their ideas and share those ideas, and let's get to work, and let's move those ideas affordable, I think, or move those ideas forward. Today's conversation reminds us that housing is just more than about a roof. You think about a roof as your house. It's about dignity. It's about belonging. It's about the chance to build a life. When we listen to the people most affected and work together across sectors, we move closer to a central Iowa where everyone has a safe place to call home. And that's our goal. As Luke said, if you'd like to hear more about how to get involved, whether it's volunteering, giving, or advocating, go to unitedwaydm.org/housing. Thanks for listening to Community Difference Makers. Join us next time in our last episode of our 4-part series on housing and homelessness. We'll be having a deep conversation on policies and partnerships that can help make affordable housing possible.